because this is published,
Yeah,
but people don't have access to the journal it's published in.
they don't have access, but I was allowed to reprint it. So you can go to enochian.today and you can search for, you
Oh,
can just
okay.
search reprint. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So
So that's,
it's on enochian.today.
yes, yes. So you can just search for that. So the idea of this is just to try to, I break it down into 10 parts. I always like parts, growing up as a kid, you just worry about, oh, I got to read all this. Well, I can read this chapter, I can read this part, and then I'll get it, right? So it's basically an overview of like what's going, what is Enochian, but having to give some background about like the classical elements of, back in the antiquity and the zodiacal signs and all of that.
Now, just to give people some background, you published this for a select assortment of intense Enochian magicians.
No, I basically wrote this so that a general reader could be able to figure it out and understand it, even if they didn't have any background in magic. That was basically what I wanted to write this for.
All right.
But I wanted to just briefly mention, so
I
the
failed to bait you into saying what you know I wanted you to say, but we're
no,
not
I'm not
going
going to.
there.
We're not going to do that. We're not
Your
going to do
will is strong, brother.
that. So, so anyway, the whole idea is to basically, there were a couple of things that I realized about what was some of the structure or the odd imbalance to the structure of three parts of the system. So one of these was the assignment of the ensigns on the holy table. So there are seven of those, and those are each planetary in nature. And you can see here the layout, and I just basically very simply put, you can see Venus at the top and Mercury in the lower left, all of that.
Did they only give one set of correspondences and placements in the diary, or were there
I would
arguments?
this is where my knowledge is not perfect. I would need to I believe that they did. I think it was just one.
Yeah.
This would be, I'm pretty
Sort of
sure
like
it's
the
Sloan
sons of
for
light. There's no. It's nice when there's only one because we don't debate it, like unlike the Watchtower, which is a night.
yes. Yeah, where's the Recenza for the ensigns?
No more
Yes.
resentment, please,
None
please.
of none of those. But so the idea is like I'm pretty sure it's Sloan 3188 is where you would check that if you're going to go deep dive into that. But I did not like go back and perfectly check everything. I just am like, okay, I know this. I'm gonna like just stick with this. But if you let me move this over on my screen. So the one thing I noticed that kind of bugged me as an astrologer, as a budding astrologer. By the way, I just passed level 2 of my certification exam. I
Hey,
got two more to go.
congrats.
Whoop whoop. Um, so what I noticed is that this order is off, right? In the sense that usually things follow what's known as the Chaldean order, which is the planets from slowest speed to fastest speed. So we're talking about Saturn, then Jupiter, then Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and then the Moon. So I noticed that was off. So I had to think about, well, why that would be. And that was one thing that I noticed that you had to pull in like a lot of this combination of some astrological terms, three different things that all of which basically led me to say, okay, the angels prefer the night sect to the day sect because they flipped everything around. And that's what you can see here.
Hmm.
So it all has to do with like if you flip the zodiac, there's this thing known in astrology. Let me back up here. So astrology sort of, it has the zodiac, so you got the signs of the zodiac along the path that the sun takes throughout the day, which is known as the ecliptic. So, and then you start from, the vernal equinox, you go to, or the spring equinox, you go, you got Aries, you got Taurus, Gemini, etc. All, and they make this big circle around the Earth, right? And if you were to take that and just fold it about the Aries Libra axis, and you were to flip planets according to whether or not they're exalted or not, or their exaltation placements, but only if they're of the day sect, which is to say the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn, then you actually can figure out, okay, the angels are actually saying these placements are exalted placements, which kind of makes sense because we're talking about God and the heavens and all of that. But they're flipped if they are of the day, and instead we're gonna do this weird thing where we flip them according to in their orders, uh, in that in the sky according to exaltation. So each planet has a place in which they are said to be exalted. So the sun is exalted in Aries, the moon is exalted in Taurus, the Saturn in Libra, etc. So you can see it in the visual if you're watching the video version here. Um, but at any rate, if not, you can look it up like I did, or you can I have a version of this. You can actually look at the reprint article on my blog. But basically, it's sort of explaining why things are off from the Chaldean order and instead saying, the angels are giving you a version of the exaltation scheme, but they're just flipping it a little bit selectively, based on if the planet is seen during the day. And I'm not sure why that is. I know that Jason Louv, we talked about him a little bit offline, but he argues that the Aethers are initiation into Bina. Okay, I mean that's one way to get there if you are going through the Aethers, and I think I mentioned Shakti earlier and all of that. And that's his model.
It's a popular way to
Yeah,
see it, I think. And I'm very, very sympathetic to Louvre seeing things that way. Because like
yeah,
the 50
yeah,
Gates of Dana, like magicians have been looking for a way to play that out in ritualistic terms for a very, very long time.
yeah.
And I
And
think some
I
early
tend to agree.
Kabbalists did. I'm not sure though, because unfortunately, we've still not translated Abulafia even, and
Right.
maybe it's in there. I don't know. Um,
Yeah. There's one book on there that I've thought about getting, but it's just on Amazon. It's just like, I don't know if I have time for the, that's the problem with getting into magic, or, and especially with an academic bent, you can like keep trying to get all of these things in there. So anyway, that was like one thing.
Yeah, you spend
And
like 20 grand and it's a drop in the bucket of the books you need.
yes, yes.
That I couldn't remember when talking to Aaron Leach the other day.
Yeah.
David R. Jones was the name I was trying to get to because his work has been very helpful for me in
Ex
understanding, especially
extraordinarily
'cause I come
knowledgeable.
from the
Yes.
golden dawn Enochian world to reconfigure my brain over the last several years into to just to get that stuff out so I could approach it fresh. Very, very helpful.
Yes. Yes. And I know Duquette
Rocks.
quotes him liberally.
Who does?
So Duquette,
Oh, well,
yes,
Duquette's a smart man.
yes, he is. So
I hear he's
page
in prison
9.
too.
What's that?
Nothing.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
just being silly, man.
all right.
I'm a silly
Uh,
guy.
okay, so back up, page 9. Yeah, so that question I have, so this is the table, right? It's shocker, an article about Enochian reflects Enochian and its liberal use of tables. So at any rate, what I found is that if you do the math, if you add it all up, you get a total of 144 times that planet that all planets that are either exalted or domicile are represented. So now obviously 144 is nice in a couple ways, or in actually three nice ways. The first, it's the square of 12. So you have 12 signs of the zodiac. That's nice. It's also the reverse of the number 441, which is the number associated with the sigillum. And also the square root of 441 is 21, which is the reverse of the square root of 144, which is 12. So you get this nice reflection and this idea of the angel saying, the first shall be last and the last shall be first, from that line in the Bible, Matthew, whatever I cited there. I want to say it's 20 something. It's been a while since I've made a big study, but it's referenced there. But at any rate, this whole idea of angels flipping stuff around became important. And then the last one, which to me is like the killer, if you want to know that this is a genuine transmission, I don't see anybody arguing with this,
So
which
it's
is,
transitioning from UPG to VPG.
what is VPG?
Oh, you haven't even watched my interview with Aaron yet.
And no, I've listened to it, but I don't remember you. Oh, wait, unverified personalism, verified personalism.
which I,
Aha,
which
I
I,
did. I
which
remembered.
so clever, I pointed out is the same letter in Latin.
Aha, aha.
So, so my point, because I was trying to argue that UPG is redundant and stupid, though I didn't use those words at the time. I just think that gnosis is valuable enough to seek on its own terms, and that to put
Yes,
qualifiers on that word is a it's disrespectful, I think, to the
yeah,
whole the whole project, the whole desire for gnosis, to then qualify, be like, oh, if you got gnosis, you got gnosis. And of course
right.
it's for you. But when Aaron told me the VPG thing, I was like, okay, verify personal gnosis. So some gnosis, but that this leads people into this idea that gnosis, therefore, is only gnosis if it gets verified. And that
Yeah, and it's
verified
not.
personal gnosis is the same thing as fantasy, which is such a disrespectful
Yeah,
way to think about.
that's exactly right. I was going to say it's a great way to start shitting on people if, oh, it's not verified, therefore you're just mentally masturbating or something. It's like,
It
come
also
on.
makes people think that anything they think is unverified personal gnosis, which it isn't.
Yeah,
The attainment of gnosis should be a radically transformative experience. If you
yes.
aren't personally transformed and reconfigured into something else by the gnosis, it's not gnosis, because understanding is application,
hmm Yeah. So
according
I would say I
to
would say
Oscar
the, like
J.G. Rambach.
so using the PG, the UPG, this is I guess this is a universalizing, how about this, personal gnosis that the angels directed me towards during this thing. And this is like, it's, if you take your biggest skeptic, right? I don't see them arguing with this once they understand it. So let's go ahead and scroll to the big table with the 91. So in
Yeah.
addition to these governors and the 91 governors associated with the different parts of the earth, in addition to the aethers and the zodiacal kings, there are also these zodiacal kings when in these parts of the earth have these massive numbers, okay, four digit, on the order of four digits, right? Now, if you had take 91 four-digit numbers, we'll just say seemingly at random, or very, very difficult to just sort of suss out, what these numbers are, keep them all in your head, that sort of thing. And if I were to give you a large number that they needed to add up to, it is almost impossible for you to realize, even just by trial and error, the human mind to do that, unless you're one of these very rare, like one in a million human mental calculators who can like take the seventh root of like a six-digit number and no problem, as fast or faster than a calculator, right? But for we mortal human beings, that is extraordinarily rare.
Have you ever seen that done?
I've seen people do it who are amazing,
Yeah.
but they're so rare.
I
And
figure if you do meet those people, it probably is in Mensa, though, or something like that.
maybe
Maybe.
so, but it turns out it's like some kind of weird quirk. I remember one guy, he was doing it, and it had to do with like the part of the brain associated with numbers was more fused with his parietal lobe, which is moving. And he literally said, when I get going, and it was almost like to him, it felt like he was physically running or being physically active, and that was stimulating the same part of the brain that did the numbers that could like just literally run through them.
Very crazy.
But but I don't think Kelly was one of those. Who knows? Maybe he was, but it's very rare. And you combine that with the placement of the Zodiacal Kings. I don't think it's possible for somebody to have planned this. I don't even think it's possible for two people to have planned this to and to make it like some sort of massive hoax or whatever. So why am I? This is all a big lead up. Okay, so
Yeah.
big four-digit numbers, pull them out of a hat, let's say, and you don't know how much they add up to. So if I'm telling you, okay, do these numbers add up to, this other big 4-digit or maybe 5-digit number, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that off the top of your head. You could try by trial and error adding up 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, etc. But for most of us, that's not going to happen. And what are these big numbers that I'm asking you to add it up to? These are numbers that are actually in the calls, and they actually are given, they're like a regular Enochian word that translates to, for example, I think 69,636 is the biggest one. And
And
when
these
I,
themes are based on Rekensa, right?
whichever the calls themselves.
The Zodiacal
So,
King
the
number.
Zodiacal Kings. No, they are listed out in one of the cotton appendices. I want to say cotton appendix 2, and they're just associated with the governors as they appear in order from Lil, but I don't from Lil down to text, but I don't think that I don't think it matters because the governors are still, if you look at how they're done per tablet. And the only thing that shifts in the Recensa to the original one is the order and location of the tablets relative to each other. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. But anyway, right, we
I
can,
think there's a
I'm
couple
definitely, what's
others.
that? Yeah,
I
there's
think there's
Power Oran.
couple letters. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That to me. That's the significant change in my mind, because the switching of the placement of the tablets is
Mhm.
it's not even what most people think it is, right? Because D drew the diagram of the directions wrong,
Mm.
right? Switching
Yeah.
hey with Oipe,
Yeah,
Oipe.
I think Leach was
So
talking about that on the last
Oipe
podcast about,
goes in the north, and Mpe goes in the west,
yeah.
and that would also make Oipe in the north water and etc.
Yeah. There's
That's
a,
the
there's a
stuff that I
shift.
find more significant. But this stuff, where you're at, like, so just as you're explaining, can maybe keep in mind the listeners, because even I don't have too much familiarity with
Yeah.
the ground that we're currently in.
Yeah, this is so basically, so let's say if I give you like 100 numbers and I pull them out of a random number generator, and then I tell you that there's another big number, 69,636. We'll use that one, right? Because it's big. And I tell you, okay, using these, numbers that I pull out of a random number generator, do these add up to, and by the way, the whole point of like explaining this is to say how difficult and nearly impossible it is for a person to just randomly add these numbers up. So the question is, did the numbers that I spit out of a random number generator, these 100, do is there a group of those, a subset of those that will add up to this big large number that I gave you? 69,636 is one of them, for example, right? And that's one of the numbers that's actually in the Enochian calls. And the answer is, I don't know. And I was an idiot, right? I tried to do that myself. I'm like, okay, I'll just go ahead and, try to add up this one and this one and I realized that immediately, pretty soon, like this is an impossible task.
Hmm.
But I did some research, and it turns out that I am not alone in foolishly pursuing this, and that it turns out this is known as a subset sum problem, which is if I give you a certain sum out of this collection of a set of numbers that I say, is there a subset from this other set of numbers that adds up to that? There's no way to know that, right? But what I did was I then said, okay, well, how is that solved? And on the Wikipedia article, it said usually these are solved by using a program. And luckily, I'm decent at Excel, and it turns out that there's also an equivalent of in known as LibreCalc for Linux machines. And man, is that one better than Excel at solving a subset sum problem. But basically, the
Oh,
idea is
good. Who
that,
would have thought?
yeah, who would have thought that all of this math that
I
is coming from
assumed that the
angels.
reason Bill Gates killed it was because it was bad.
Excel is actually extraordinarily useful, but when it came to solving this problem, it was not that good. Because like it was just way faster in Linux. But I didn't know whether or not they would add up.
But
And
this
it
is very
turns,
fascinating what you've done here.
yeah, if you go to this, so this is like the
Yeah.
towards the last third of the article.
Should I go up
Um,
again? No?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, however you want to do it.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, you can see like it's a huge, there are 91 numbers, 91 very large numbers. And so I didn't know if there was anything to that. But it turns out that we'll use that number in particular, that there is a solution. And it turns out that it happens to exactly add up to the number of serving angels in Lil. And if you go down to wherever the solution is, I forget the other ones. I think it's Lil, Zip, Pop. Scroll down a little bit more to the solutions. Yeah, so that would be, just keep going. There we go, stop. So a little bit higher, yeah, right there, where the 6930 at the top. So it turns out that if you take the serving angels associated with the zodiacal kings slash governors of the Aether of Lil and of the Aether of Zip, these are pretty familiar Aethers, aren't they? These are pretty big, important Aethers, wouldn't you say? And then the Aether of Pop and the Aether of Rye, that exactly those 12 governors uh, are excuse me, those 12 those zodiacal kings associated with the governors of those aethers are associated with 12 numbers of serving angels, that if you take those serving angels, add them up, then all of a sudden you get the solution. That's in the calls that Edward Kelly is separately scrying letter by letter that he doesn't even have the translation for until after the fact, that, okay, this big number is here and he has no idea what it is, and he doesn't associate with any mathematics, anything like that. But it turns out that that number is separately given as being associated with a number of aethers, and that only if you actually do this complex mathematics and ask a computer to grind out a solution for you, it does a solution suddenly present itself. And these numbers that here just seem like a bunch of random numbers, it turns out that they are specifically associated with certain aethers that are very important and that are numerically associated. I believe like the aether, let me just look this up really quickly. I think the aether of Pop is like 19. 19 is very important in Enochian, but let me just double check. Well, I can't take a look at that. I can't sort of do this and talk at the same time. I believe it's the 19th Aether. Yeah. I could be wrong. Somebody will fact check me after the fact and then, nail me in the comments, but whatever. But the point is, you read the article and you realize, oh, holy cats. So there were 10 very large numbers that are in the Enochian calls, right? And I found solutions to exactly half of those. And all of those solutions included the zodiacal king Levevoth, who's also the only zodiacal king with an 8-letter name, as opposed to all the rest that have 7 letters. I know that Aaron Leach talks about Levevoth, and well, maybe it's more like the letter Tav in Hebrew, and so it's not really, it's making that T sound. I didn't go that way because the reason why is that if you look at the Cotton Appendix, that letter H, it's almost like D is sort of like, annoyed that he has to actually write in that letter H. It's smaller than all of the other letters, but he's sort of like, it's almost like he's forced to, or whoever was writing that up was like, the angel's like, nope, you better add in that letter H. And so the letter H is capital, but it's smaller. It's like to the side almost. But the reason I'm mentioning that is there's no way that a guy who's just having these visions is going to seed each of the solutions to these mathematical problems with the one zodiacal king who has an 8-letter name instead of all the rest which have 7-letter names. The other thing I noticed is that were some near solutions where it was, for example, the number 630, 332 versus 633, et cetera, that if you take these near solutions, those numbers all add up to the number 50, which is very important in Kabbalah, and the letter Nun, but also that the numbers that come out are 1, 3, 7, 19, and 20. 1, unity of God. 3, the Trinity. 7, you get into the heptarchy, and of course the big obsession of the number 7. 19, which is the number of calls that are not aether based, and also the square root of 361, which is the rounded square root of 360 degrees of a circle, and 20, which is half the number of cells along the outer circle of the SDA. So a lot of stuff just kind of came at me as I
Mm.
was like doing this. I'm like, it's like heightened mystical state, and the angels are like, you better look at this, you better look at this, you better do this, and I say, okay, okay. But it was pretty interesting experience. So I just kind of like did a huge mind dump when I wrote this article, and I was surprised it was only 13 pages, but yeah.
Yeah, well, outstanding work. I really must say this is excellent, like just absolutely excellent. When you sent it to me, I was so excited at just earlier today because this was a spontaneous podcast since Zarathustra the Aquarian has again yet to manifest in my sphere, but I'm sure he'll show up. I really look forward to talking about the Source family with one of its members. Like it's definitely my favorite cult of all time so far.
Interesting. Well, I look forward to that podcast, but yeah. So
I'm
so I
glad you
wanted to,
agree. Thanks for
yeah,
being free.
yeah, I just you can see why I got obsessed about like, oh, I gotta write this out. I gotta explain why this is important to people. Of course, this is kind of like burying the lead, but there's no way somebody's gonna read this start to finish and start with like 91 huge numbers and like being like, what? I don't understand this, and toss it to the side. I had to put it at the end. So, but yeah, I think you show this to a skeptic, especially like a hardcore materialist mathematician, and be like, here you go, bruh, or here you go, sis, and just like explain this to me.
So
They'd be
you
like,
would
I don't see how skepticism holds up under that.
you would say that this is another nail in the coffin of skepticism about whether or not they were actually talking to real entities of some sort.
Yes. Yeah, I don't believe the human mind is capable of this. Not 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 a human
Kelly's,
mind. What's that?
especially Kelly's.
Kelly Kelly was a lot brighter than he gets credit for,
I
but I don't.
learned that when I went to Prague for this third time and finally went I went to it was the second time at the tower, and the guide was saying very different things than the guide had said back in '07 when I was there the first time, or '06, I can't remember. And I was like really surprised. I was like, the cropped ears and the thing. She's like, that's a theory that's never been proven. We know that from the records that we have here in Prague, and that people that study at the university. So they were giving you all this new information in
Mhm.
their tour, and it was obviously a tour guide who just knew what they're told to tell. Right, it wasn't a
Mm,
studying of the stuff, the material, but they're passing off the cuff information that none of us have heard before, and it's because
yeah,
in Prague they have records in Latin and Czech and all and whatever else, I guess, and those people study those things. It's their city, right? It's
yeah,
like people talking about Frater, and I'm like here in Vancouver. Oh yeah, I know where those places are. I can tell you, no, that's not. It wouldn't make sense for that to go there. You know,
sure.
you know. So yeah, there's a. I mean, yeah, he was definitely, and I'm really interested to hear more about the family of love thing with that Leach mentioned on Dr. Sledgehammer's channel on Esoterica, right? The whole
Yeah,
like the wife swapping makes more sense in the context of them being in a part of a sort of a community that was sort of free love, which, the idea that free love didn't exist till the 60s is so absurd, right? Or that
yeah.
there's had been no previous sort of polyamorous social revolutions. That's nonsense. I'm sure there was probably small versions of that nonstop throughout all
Well,
human
we,
history.
yeah, I mean, we didn't evolve from the common chimpanzee. We evolved from the common ancestor to both the chimpanzee and the bonobo. So, like, yeah. And I'll add a little wrinkle to this. Do you think it should not be surprising to anyone that there are Christian sects that have developed around that, because isn't the second greatest commandment, next to, of course, loving God, isn't the second greatest commandment to love your neighbor as yourself? And there's, isn't couldn't somebody take that to be like, well, why wouldn't that include sex? I mean,
Yeah, I
hello.
mean, I hope someone does a thing on the family of loves at some
I'm
point. I think
curious
that's
about
what,
that.
yeah, right. What I don't know anything other than that's why I just keep saying the same name, the name of it, because I don't,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's somebody who can take that and write a nice paper, maybe
yeah,
get a
maybe,
good dissertation out of it.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. Not sure if that, yeah. Well, we already talked about doctoral life. Jesus Christ, what a nightmare.
Yeah, I've thought about going back, but I don't know. I don't know.
200
I
grand, 200 grand here to redo
yeah.
it. I just don't
Yeah.
think it's worth spending 200 grand in 5 years.
Or you get an assistantship or something. It's just like that doesn't that you can barely live. You need support on that, and it's just like I don't
I
know.
could with 5 years of full-time work, I could instead work for Uber, make 96 a year, save up and buy a beautiful piece of property somewhere, make a little cottage, and there you go, right? As
Yeah.
instead of coming out an additional 200 grand in debt to the 100 plus I already owe for my master's, and just be like, well, there was no way out anyway, so may as well go deeper into the hole. I don't know. It's a strange system that we've set up. As soon as we removed meritocracy from the universities, which happened after I graduated, fortunately, otherwise I wouldn't have graduated if I probably had, you know, went today because, money wins rather than test scores for some reason. But yeah, that's just, what California is now like taking doctors' medical license if they agree with what the pharmaceutical companies say. We're going down a dark path, brother.
Yeah, I need to look into that. I haven't heard that one yet. So,
And
man,
I don't even want to
it's
know more about it. I don't want to look into it.
yeah, it's like I mean there's that this is the problem. It's like the internet, it's like there's so much information to know, but I don't know. It's like I think that's the problem is like when you were younger and I was younger, there were fewer sources of information, but there were a lot of books. And at least they were kind of organized okay. Man, with the internet, it's just like, especially social media, and I am engaged in social media, it's just like I don't know if I can keep up with this stuff anymore. It's like you basically need to curate what you have, but then if you curate, you're building your own echo chamber. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's a
I don't
problem.
know. Yeah.
So this information goes a long way, you'd say, to disprove the idea of
Y- y-
fabrication.
Yeah, you can't look at this last section. You can't look at it and understand it and then walk away and say, okay, there wasn't a transmission. This was just invented by human mind. You cannot do that. That's my take on it.
You
Other
heard it
people
here,
will of course
folks.
disagree.
According
What's
to
that?
Kelly was legit talking to angels, according to the official word from Mensa and its spokes. You are the
Just
spokesperson for
I
Mensa.
I am
That's why
just
you're
I
left.
am just a guy. I am
Yeah, I
just a
know.
guy.
I know. I'm trying and failing to be funny, probably, but
No, no, you're making me laugh, so I don't know
amazing
how
work.
you're failing.
Okay. Yeah, that's all that matters. Very cool. Like, so yeah, this is just what a contribution to the studies. I think
Thank you.
I look on the purist group on Facebook, and it's like most of them can barely even keep up with what you're doing because you're going so hardcore at it, and I really think that's amazing, man.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think the problem is like a lot of people are contributing um but yeah, I'm hoping that this
Well, we're
much
all
at least
focused on different aspects of the system, which
that's
is what's
that's the
really
thing.
great. Like that's what's cool about what you're doing. And well, I was saying to Aaron offline that a lot of us coming up into the purist world now, like you and I, we're very consciously not trying to reproduce others' efforts. We're very
Yes,
consciously trying to look at things that others haven't looked at because we do want to grow the knowledge. Well, there's enough intro stuff there, like Frater has done amazing work in his stuff, and all of the secondary literature here has something to offer. Um,
absolutely.
and which of course
And by
that on the
and I
pure
got
group.
yeah, and I want to say like there's no way this article is written without me having so many people who have digested the source material to actually dive into try to understand some more, and needing every single other author's person, take on it. And it's just, it's insane. Like, I think all of us are just really trying to do what we can to figure this thing out. It's like fractally, insanely, it really is like the infinite, it's like you're trying to look at this thing, and it's just like, it's all of us together making this stuff work and make sense. So everybody give themselves a pat on the back for what they've done. I gotta say, like, we're all really working towards it.
The the fractal nature